Welcome to Journey from Jacob. From our first breath to our last heartbeat, we are all on a journey. Jacob was a biblical character whose journey is documented for our benefit. Like all of us, there were unforgettable moments along the way which required decisiveness. One of those decisions determined his destination. We will not only discuss Jacob's journey, but Israel's as well, right up to date. May this podcast inspire you to make choices along your way that will benefit others and guide you to the destination we all long for.
Hey, shalom and welcome. My name is Paul. I am the director of Comfort My People. Comfort My People is a ministry that we are bringing the love of Yeshua into the lives of Israelis specifically, but Israelis include Arabs, Palestinians, Druze, Ethiopians, and people that have emigrated there, made aliyah to Israel from over 100 nations now. So it's a huge differential in their population. 99.9.7. That's a lot. That's the people that are unbelievers. So Israel is an unbelieving nation by population. Now, there could be more than that because a lot of new believers came out of this war. The interest for the gospel has grown sufficiently and excitingly, but they don't come out and just say, well, I'm a believer. It's pretty much, they're not connected. So it's hard to really measure this content, and no one's really doing the metrics. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that the interest is growing, but it has been so low for so long that it seems so impossible. How could they not be saved? Israel should be most people call a Christian nation. Well, it'll never be a Christian nation, but that doesn't mean that all Israel won't be saved because God said this will happen one day. But it seems like it's so far off still after 2,000 years of the gospel being out there. The Jews have still not come to an understanding in a full sense of who Yeshua is. Even though he was a Jewish man, he is a rabbi, and he walked the same streets and slept in the same pastures as his Jewish disciples did. And he died in Israel. He was born and raised, and he never left the country. And yet he's an almost unknown figure. But more and more recently, people have come to know him in Israel. And when they learn of him, they're very excited. But the history is what kept them from this for so long. And some of the mistakes of the early Jewish believers. So there's a combination of things that have kept Israel somewhat in the darkness and have put their hands out not to receive Jesus as Messiah, but to push him out further. There's so much to be said about this, and I'm not putting the blame anywhere. There are reasons for it, but right now the impetus of Comfort My People remains the same, and that's to support those who are indigenous to the land, who are doing the work of bringing the love of Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah, to their people in very creative ways, but with great intention. And I want to read a verse from Proverbs to help you understand their perspective, which has become my perspective as well. And I think you would want to latch on to it also when you hear it. It has to do with the way we reach people. Now in Israel, it's specific. And for outsiders to come to Israel and try to share the gospel in ways that may work in the West, it almost always falls flat. And that's why Comfort My People was named Comfort My People, because God gave us this name. I was asked to start the ministry in Israel, and I knew it needed a name, and I asked God, what kind of name can I come up with? And the name that God gave me, I didn't have to come up with them. It was Comfort My People, and it comes from the verse in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 1 and 2. Actually, it's a couplet where he says, comfort my people, comfort my people. He says it twice, and it's an appeal, yes, but it's also a command. So it's a command for one group of people to comfort another group of people. Now, the one group of people that would bring the comfort are the ones that already receive comfort. This is the biblical model. It's in the New Testament. So if you've received comfort, the purpose of that is to bring comfort elsewhere. And so the other people are to receive this comfort are the Jewish people. And he says why in verse 2. He says, tell her that her iniquity has been pardoned, for she has received double from the Lord's hand for her sin. So what is the sin? Well, the sin is the same sin of all people. It's unbelief, and unbelief moves us in a direction away from God. And usually we embrace things that are God-like to us, but they're not. They're a dead-end street, but we believe, we put our trust in them, and we end up failing. And ultimately we realize that there is no other name under heaven given to men whereby we must be saved. Doesn't happen to everybody. I'm not trying to pretend it does. But this is the only way. Jesus, the Messiah, said this while he was walking through Israel, that he was the way, the truth, and the life. Haderech ha'emetz v'chaim. The way, the truth, and the life. And no one can come to the Father, Abba, but by him. So he made it very clear. He wasn't trying to sugarcoat so people would join his club. It was inclusive in the sense of it had to be by belief. It had to be through faith. And God gives the grace to even believe that, and then a person is saved, which is God's intention. But it doesn't end there, because the goal of our faith is the salvation of our soul. And our soul is where our heart and our mind, our emotions, our decisions are made. Our choices are made in our soul. And if we have a bad way of thinking, if we've had a really broken life, then we're not going to think straight. If our heart's been wounded so many times, it's going to become hardened. So part of this new covenant is giving us a new mind, a new heart, a right spirit. And he writes his word, his law, the law of God, on our hearts so that we would do it. And he takes away the stony heart and gives us a heart of flesh that can beat and feel for people. He circumcises our heart from the inside so that we're a different person, so we're no longer the same. We've been born from above. We're a new creation, and the old things pass away and new things become new. And so in that process, we realize that there's people out there that don't have what you've been given. And it's by grace. You didn't do it because you earned it. But you have this inclination now. It's a good one. And it's the right one. The thoughts of the righteous are right, it says in the Proverbs. So there's a verse that I want to read to you. And we're going to keep going on our journey from Jacob, though. I don't want to think I'm backtracking or going off track. But this is very pertinent. It says, Lev chacham yaskil pihu, v'al svatav yosif lechach. The reason I'm reading in Hebrew is not to show off, because believe me, I'm not a good Hebrew reader. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I have studied the original language, and it's meant a lot to me, and it's helped me. And I'm not saying everyone has to do this. But the thing that I want to point out is that the Hebrew obviously is where the entire Old Testament is translated from, but it's an ancient Hebrew. So it has this very attractive sense to it, where it's rhythmic, it's poetic, and there's a lot of metaphors in there, because body parts are often used to explain something. Jesus did the same. But in the English translation, it's usually not using the same picture. So the language is pictorial. So lev means heart. Chacham is wise. So the wise in heart. It's talking about a man or a woman who have become wise. Now, we get to Corinthians in the New Testament, it says that Jesus has become wisdom for us. And if we lack wisdom, as James says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let them ask of God, who gives liberally if we're asking for the right reasons, not for selfish cause. So the heart of the wise, yaskil, means instructs, but it also means a specific way of teaching. So it's teaching from the heart, but it's teaching judiciously. So things are discreet, they're discerning. So the wise in heart instructs with discernment or judiciously, and pihu means his mouth, or literally his tongue. So it could mean either, but the wise in heart instructs his tongue. Now, if you see the picture already. Your tongue, okay, something to do with eating or speaking, and svatav adds to his language, but it also means lips. Yosif lechach means he adds or multiplies persuasiveness. This is the word that I'm getting to, persuasiveness, to his lips. So the tongue begins the digestive system, the digestion of the word, and it also brings food into the body, and it also has the noise behind the voice. So the lips are the ones that form the words. And this is what it's this thing that's going on inside of us, this proverb's talking about, that when you begin as a wise man. Now, if you're in Jesus, you've been given wisdom. So the wisdom is recognizing the world for what it is, and yet with the sense of potential that you have a part to play. And that's why we gain knowledge, so that we can apply wisdom to it. So, but this activity is going on within. It's a spiritual thing, but it's also part of the soul, because you're thinking it through and you're allowing your heart to feel for the needs of others because you want to persuade them of what you've come to believe. And this is the outcome, is that we use what God's given us, which includes our body parts. We present our bodies as a living sacrifice to Him. And then He uses it to influence others, to understand who He is and what He requires of mankind. And the end result is a better life. This is what we're shooting for, is to get them to the point where they will be so persuaded by your life and what you do as a believer. And Jesus said, let your good works, let them see your good works, and then they will glorify my Father. It's not for personal gain. It's for the sake of them coming to the same conclusions that you and I have made to come to faith. So we'll get back now to Jacob. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because when we speak about this blessing that God gave to Abraham, and then to Isaac and Jacob, and then to the 12 sons of Jacob and their descendants forever, this is an eternal thing. It's supposed to have started with Abraham at a certain point when he believed God and it was credited to him for righteousness, and then was passed down. It continues to that point. We're still in this epoch where this message of blessing, the actual sense of blessing, which we'll talk about at greater length, is going into the families of the earth. That means everywhere. The families of the earth, all over the world, this message is supposed to go. And the families will affect the nation, and the nation, I'm not saying that every nation is going to become believers. It won't happen. But we can call a nation righteous because God calls our nation righteous. And it's very rare through history. And matter of fact, it's usually only for a short season that you could actually say our country acted righteously on our behalf as citizens of it. And we pray for that because God honors that and He wants that. And this is why He extends His blessing through individuals, into families, into the nations. And you know what the ultimate aim is? That there would be peace among men of goodwill throughout the world in different nations. There's no pretense that this is going to be a universal salvation. That's not the story. But it would increase the activity of godly people, which would change the face of our culture. Then this crosses borders and our civilization. So children could grow up in a safe environment. And I don't think there's anybody, but I know there are people that couldn't care less about the children. But any sane person would want the best for his child. So this is what we're here to do, is to extend this blessing and to encourage you to believe the word, because the word says it will happen. Because God said you will be a blessing. So that means that we have a part to play. So when God says something's going to happen, we want to get on the right side of what do I do to make it happen. That's throughout the Bible, New Testament included. Even more so, it's more clear in the New Testament. So Jacob has these 12 sons. They're grown. The youngest one is Benjamin, and the next youngest is Joseph. And this portion of Scripture focuses on Joseph. And we talked about this for a couple of weeks, about the element of seeking that was associated with the beginning of Joseph's life when he was asked by his father, told by his father, to go and check out the welfare of your brothers, and as they're shepherding the sheep, see how they're doing. And Jacob said, yeah, I'll go. He did it. And yet before that, Jacob had two very interesting dreams. One was about his brothers, the other was about his mother and father, but it was all symbolic. And in the interpretation was made by both father and the sons, the brothers of Joseph, that you think you're superior to us, don't you? And he's just telling him this dream. He wasn't arrogant about it. He was just telling them. And in the dream, it did seem that these elements of the dream were symbolic of he lording over his parents and his brothers. And they despised him. The brothers did. Jacob left it and pondered it, but he was not exactly excited about it either. But his brothers, they were furious. When it says that his brothers already hated him because his father made this very special many-colored coat and made it for Joseph, but not anyone else. And they hated him for it. And they couldn't say a kind word to him. And so they figured that Jacob loved Joseph better than any of them. And that just created this dysfunctional family, which remained that way for quite a while. So Joseph is wandering the field and he sees a certain man. He asks him, "What are you seeking?" And that's what we spoke about for the last two episodes was this concept of seeking and the question that was asked to Joseph, which began his story. It was seeking. What are you seeking? It's the first time seeking is mentioned. So it's a big concept throughout the Bible and the biblical life of believers. But he tells them, seeking for the welfare of my brothers. That's what I'm seeking. And this certain man, which I believe is a type, and Joseph, by the way, we mentioned this previously, but he is a type of Jesus very clearly, more than any other character in the Bible. And we're going to go into that more as we follow his journey. But in this place, I believe that this certain man who has no name and he has no genealogy, so there's no background to him, he's kind of like Melchizedek, who had that similar description. And so he's supernatural in a sense because he shows up out of nowhere, but comes out with a profound question. And then he tells Joseph where to go. So he gives him direction. Yes, actually corrects his direction. So it's like Jacob tells Joseph to go out, search for the welfare of his brothers. The same thing that Jesus was told by God. Jesus said that I do nothing unless the Father shows me or tells me. And he told him to seek and to save the lost, but specifically the lost sheep of the house of Israel, who were his brothers and still are. And so the same thing happened with Jacob. His father told him to go seek the welfare of your brothers. Even though his brothers hated him, he went. And it's the same thing with Jesus. He was rejected. He was despised and rejected. He came to his own, but his own received him not. And so this similarity begins right at the beginning of Joseph's story. And we're going to see more of that. So as this goes on, as his brothers see him coming, instantly one of them conspires to kill him. So let's kill him. Now, Reuben was the older brother, said, no, we're not going to do that. And he had a plan. He said, we won't kill him. We'll just throw him in a pit. And in his mind, we're told that he was thinking of when his brothers are not looking or somehow doing something else, he was going to take Joseph out of the pit so that he could run for his life. But that doesn't happen. They still have this in their mind and I think it's better if I read. So he's out in his fields. His brothers see him and they're not happy. So they throw him in this pit and then they don't know what to do next because we can't kill him. How are we going to explain this? And Reuben was not the only one that had a sense of righteousness to rescue him, but his brother Judah also said, hey, listen, what's the sense in killing him? We'd have to cover up the crime if we did that. Instead of hurting him, why don't we just put him in the cistern and we'll sell him to the Ishmaelites, who are traitors, they're Midianites, and they're enemies of the Jews, and we'll sell it to them for 20 pieces of silver. Very interesting number. If you recall, another person who was sold on the night of his betrayal, it was Jesus, and he was sold for 30 shekels. That's what the Sanhedrin gave him to betray Jesus, 30 shekels of silver. So the likeness of these two characters is already, pronounced. But why was it that, you say like, well, you said this is, likeness. It's not exactness. It doesn't mean it's exact. It's symbolic of. It's a metaphor. But the 20 pieces of silver for Joseph, Jesus got 30. That's inflation. Nothing spiritual about it. No, I'm just kidding. So the traders took him to Egypt. Now, it's interesting that these traders are Ishmaelites. Ishmael was the half-brother of Isaac, he becomes the father of Muhammad down the road into 6 centuries after Jesus came, and he becomes the father of Islam. He's the prophet Muhammad. So he's a descendant of Ishmael, whom they say in Islam that that's who the promise went to, not Isaac, but to Ishmael. And then they claim the land for themselves, which is not true. It's an abrogation. It's false. It's not right. So then the brothers, they sell him off for this price, and they take him off to be slaves. And meanwhile, they go back home after this journey. Their shepherding season is over. They go back home. They show Jacob his coat of many colors. They dipped it in goat's blood to make it look like something happened to him. And Jacob was broken. And he saw his son's road, and he says, a wild animal must have eaten him, which is what the brothers wanted him to believe. His sons wanted him to believe. Imagine this story. It's horrible. And it says Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap, and he mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. I will go to my grave mourning for my son, he said, and then he would weep. And meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Now, what's interesting at this point, if you were reading through the Bible, just so you know, this is chapter 37. And so the next chapter, 38, you would think this is the continuation of this story, but there's a break in it. I'm not sure why, but there is. This is how it's been written. And it's about one of the brothers and Tamar, who is the wife of one of his sons. So Judah is one of the 12 sons. He's going to be highlighted in the story. But in this story, he shows up. Now, this is what we're going to see emphasized. Not really emphasized, but it's out there. It's news. It's dirty laundry of the Israelites' life, because they just screw up so many times over and over. You kind of feel embarrassed by it. But you also have to put this into context. So there was not even the Bible was written yet. This is before Moses comes along. And so they don't have a Bible, but their moral code has been passed down. We see that in place, that they are supposed to live a better lifestyle than the pagans that surround them. And these people, these nations, these tribes of people their civilization was horrible. The stuff that they did is unthinkable and unspeakable, but we did see it repeated recently on a certain date of October, 2.5 years ago, more so. So it was savage. That's what I'm trying to get to. And so the Jewish people were born into slavery for 4 centuries. And it's almost like God tempered them as he was tempering the world, because he said that the iniquity of the Amorites would be fulfilled by the time they leave slavery. So there was something about the Amorites that were even worse than the other tribes, that he didn't want them to be a major part of the story. Even though they were enemies of Israel, Israel would ultimately defeat them. But they were, I don't even want to talk about what they did, but it's in the Bible and you'll read about it. But this is the break. So Judah left home and he moved to Adullam. That's because his wife had died, and it was, she had a difficult life. So Judah is left as a widower, but he had 3 sons, and the first son died. So this is another thing. He had 3 sons, but the one son was married to this woman named Tamar, and she was left a widow because one of Judah's sons died. And so by biblical law in the Old Testament, if your brother died and had a wife and he didn't have children, then you, the next son in line, was to marry this widow so that the name would continue through their line. But this is before the Bible was even written. So it was part of their culture. It was respectable because they respect the life of the dead and the continuity of the name. And so he had 3 sons. One of them died. And then the next one says, the Bible says he was a wicked man and God took care of him. But the third son would not let this wife that he was supposed to be his wife have any children. He stopped that from happening by his actions. And so then she's left without a son. Judah, the father, says to stay and wait till my third son, who's still alive, is old enough to marry you and have children. And she says, he's a young boy. He's a little boy. She says, well, go to the house and just wait. So she does what he told her. But he realizes when this boy grows up, so years pass, the boy grows up, and Judah reneged on his promise, and he did not let his son come to this woman Tamar. Long story short is that Judah he's traveling, and he sees her, and he hires her as a prostitute. And she makes a bargain with him. Hey, you got to give me something in exchange. What is it? And he says, I'll give you a goat next time I see you. Well, what you need to give me some kind of promissory. How am I going to know you're going to come back? So she says, give me a couple of articles, your walking stick, and I forget what the other thing, a scarf or something. So he does, and then he reneges on that, and she has a baby from him. And then the word's out that Tamar is a prostitute. She had a son, and she's, unrighteous. And so Judah gets word of this. He says, stone her, as if he's got the upper hand in morality. And then she says, well, tell this man, Judah, that the owner of this walking stick and this piece of clothing is the one who's the father of this child in my womb. And Judah gets it. He realizes that he's had. And he says, she's more righteous than I, and take care of her. Don't hurt her. Let her be. It's me that's at fault. Now, that's another thing, is that there was no laws about promiscuity. There was no laws about monogamy. These are just things that they picked up from passing down from the information given from Adam and Eve and their sons and sons afterwards. So they follow this lineage, which is called seed. The word is zerah in the Hebrew. Zerah means seed or descendant. And beginning in chapter 3 of Genesis, God declares a promise to Eve and Adam about the consequences of disobedience when they ate the fruit that they were not supposed to. And the ultimate consequence is that the serpent is no longer going to walk. He's going to crawl his belly on the dirt, and that the seed of the woman would crush the head of the seed of the serpent, or the serpent. And so what does that mean? Seed is a person. It's a descendant. So he promised Eve with Adam there that your descendant through you, now this is Adam and Eve, right? Through you will come a seed or a descendant that will crush the head of the serpent. But it's also going to be through your seed. So that means that you have to follow the descendancy. And when we do, we follow the descendants. It's not Cain. It's not Abel. Cain killed Abel. It can't be either one of them. But the next in line is Seth. And his name means appointed. And Eve says, perhaps he will be the one. He'll be the one what? He will be the one that will crush the serpent's head, because he's the one that's caused all this damage. So they follow this line of this seed, and it's all throughout the Old Testament, all the way up into the New Testament. The seed of the woman through certain individuals who were of the seed of Seth, which Judah was. Now Tamar, has 2 children. But the point is that the seed of Tamar is in the line of the Messiah. And when we study these descendants of Jacob, whom Judah is part of, and so is Joseph and all the 10 other brothers, we are going to see that this descendancy is critical in order to keep this in God's promise. So everything he says is true. And why I'm saying this is that it's very specific. The choosing of the individuals that become in this line that will crush the serpent's head, this story that we read, this redemption life that we have, has an ending to it. It's not something that goes on forever. There is a finale. There is a conclusion. And in order for this conclusion to come to good standing in our generation, there is something we do. And that's to hasten the day of his appearing. It's not that we want to get out of here so badly and we don't care about anybody else. It's that we want to see God glorified in the process of having his way and defeating the enemy. And this all had to be done by his plan and purpose in his way. Otherwise, it would never happen. It's been abrogated. It's been broken. It's been changed so many times throughout history because of unbelief and unwillingness. And so this story is about not just about the journey from Jacob or the journey of Joseph or any of the sons. It's the journey of humanity into a place of sound mind, sound heart, where there is this thing called the salvation of the soul, which will come with a perfect future in Jesus' name. Shalom, shalom.
We bless you for taking the time to consider this message. May it cause you to be fruitful and effective and lead others along the way with confidence and determination. Check out our website at comfortmypeople.com to become better informed and equipped to restore righteousness to the people of Israel, America, and beyond. Please consider sharing this and visit us on social media. Shalom and blessings.